Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. Super excited. Also, everyone, on the Patreon, I now am up and running. You get 2 Paranormal Karen episodes that are, one is just what I'm reading or doing during the week, and the other one is what's going on in Utica, which is getting really good. So join the Patreon /rontowski. Super excited interview. I have never interviewed you before, have I?
Yeah, I don't think you have. Yeah.
Mark Pontius. Nailed it. All right. Everyone knows that I say everyone's last name wrong. And also we're being joined by Pappy, who is the awesomest pit bull ever.
For some extra breathing sounds and licking noises.
Or if there needs to be a rearrangement in couch seating. So, Mark, I am just going to jump right in because we have one topic I want to talk about with you. But first, how did you get into this sort of, I want to say woke space, or give me a thumbnail of how you kind of, I hate to say woke, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. The terms are so hard now.
It is, because woke used to mean good things, and now it's like weird.
Yeah, I don't really put a term, I try not to put a term on it anymore much when I talk about it, but it is some phenomena a lot of people are having, whatever it is, like centering yourself or finding the reason.
It's not a spiritual awakening either, because that's not a...
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the term I guess I would use, but it's more than that. I think it can't be put in a box really, but I don't know where it really, like, it's hard to put it in a quick thumbnail, but I think it's...
where you started to go, I know this is a good way to say it, because this is my big thing now. Unplugging from tribal beliefs.
Yeah. I'm saying I'm like thinking because it was definitely a gradual process for me, but there is like a speed up point of like 2 or 3 years where like significant stuff happened. But just to say, like, leading up to that, I just... throughout my life, had a like curiosity about the mystery of life. I grew up loving magic, like, you know, ta-da magic. And I liked illusions and things like that. And so there's a part of me that was always like enjoyed kind of being a little bit too open-minded with certain concepts, because I enjoyed the imaginal realm of like potentially magic is real and potentially, you know, all these things. So I think that led through my adolescence and as I matured as an adult, that I had like specific, I guess some questions that weren't answered that I just left open. And as I also like succeeded in a career that put me into a like really unique experience for like 10 years by traveling all over the world, meeting a ton of different people, having a lot of doors open to the culture that are unique, and you get different perspectives, I think, that start to, I guess, widen the scope of reality. And a lot of those questions started to make a little more sense. I didn't have answers, but I was like, okay, there is an illusion to reality, and I don't know what's going on, but like my intuition has been right this whole time. Like magic is real or whatever. It was very vague in the beginning, but so that led me up to, I would say in like the beginning, it's 2017, 2018 time period, where I was in a touring band that I had been wanting to get out of for a while. I had had a lot of internal challenges and struggles, and had been sitting on the pot too long. So it was hell for me a lot of the times out on tour. And this caused me to start to like really have deep questions, and I needed answers before I could make a decision on whether I really wanted to leave this project.
And it was a big thing because it was kind of like your whole life, or it was everything.
Yeah, it was like the dream, you know. I mean, I was a musician growing up, and then I also got into film, but then pretty quickly music was my main thing. And I had achieved a dream of my, like, getting somewhat to the top for me, you know, like
You were, and also, this is a weird thing, and it's like, I ran into this when I was like, are you a comedian or a tarot reader? And then it's like, you can be all of those. But, like, you did make it. And there's a weird, there's a tribal programming. Like, less than 1% of musicians really make it. So you make it, so you have to be grateful and you have to stay with it and you have to do what it can. You know what I mean? Like all that, instead of just going, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do this.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird shit to the what we even say is making it and success. Yeah. And I didn't really learn that until I achieved what some things in culture we say is success. We all agree, kind of. And I guess what was, pumping my gas, making me get there was some kind of desire for success or attention or whatever. But yeah, so when you do it, I achieved that for me, that I think we each uniquely have what that is. And so at a certain point I was satiated with chasing the attention or chasing that thing. But yeah, then you are fed, well, okay, this is the dream job. So many people want this. And now here I'm starting to not enjoy it anymore. And mostly I think it was just because I'm a person that likes change and I like to evolve. And it was a long time that I had been with this one band doing this one thing and had rode the thing really far. So I was just happy with my success in the material career world. But internally, deeply sad because there was this fleeting thing that okay, we achieved it, but what now? Even I had a good amount of funds and money and investments and stuff, but that's going to last me my whole life. And so there was what do you want to change up and do something else? And there's a side of me that I have many interests. So is immediately excited to do that.
I think I'm in the spot that you were right before your change, because I do identify so much as a comic and I love everything about comedy, but there's a change coming and I don't know what it is and I'm afraid to let go. But I also feel like my issue is ambition. I want to do everything. And I don't know that it's a bad thing, because it's a kind of an exciting, you have this life where you can do whatever you want. So do it. But I think I'm right before where you were talking about the change. And also, I don't think if you told me I had enough money to retire right now, there's not a ton of things that would change, because I don't think retirement sounds good at all to me. Does it to you?
Yeah, I mean, not in some ways. In some ways it does, there's I think certain people deal with the burden of making money. It is a burden to a lot of people because it's challenging in this system. And there are, however, ways to figure out how to manifest it and create abundance with an already abundant source. We just need to educate ourselves with it. But I do think that can get in the way of enjoying things. And I just will say for myself, I am not good with money. Never was growing up, and I borrowed a lot of money. I paid it all back once I got money, but and I invested it along the way. But now here I am back at a point where I'm not nearly at the rate that I was making money. Slowed down, but in that pursuit of the dream that came along with money and a lot of success, it was really fun for a minute, and there is a great freedom from having a lot of money because there's just those basic things. The burden goes away. But it doesn't really satiate and fulfill as much as we believe it to in our culture. Yep. The way we have on such a pedestal, we worship it. It doesn't ever do that. And so, and you can see it obviously in the people that are millionaires and rich. They're not deeply happy. You said it perfectly. Of course you're a musician. You have a way with words, but it's another problem solved. But that doesn't mean there's not another problem coming. Yeah, totally. I can pay my rent. That's great, but that doesn't mean. And it creates more problems. And actually, for me as a creative individual, what's really interesting, I've learned that it made me too comfortable. I think creativity exists in a world of tensions, slight tension, and a big tension for some artists, whether they realize it or not, when they are poor, struggling artists, is that they're struggling to survive, and they put that energy into their work because they somehow figure out that it is the vessel that will get them freedom and get them money. But that is the point I was making. But that is kind of a thing too, and I feel, first of all, I think the music industry is. I don't know if the music industry or the acting industry are the hardest. I think comics have it easier in that they're one entity. They maybe have to have more in their head
but I can always create myself, do it however I want and sell that. Whereas with a band, you got to worry about this many people. And with an actor, you can be the best, but you're not tall enough, or you're not, you know what I mean? Like all that. The thing, I do love the internet being the great equalizer, but it is interesting how many ways you can get pulled away from just, let's just write it. Let's just do it. Let's just draw it. Let's just create it.
Yeah.
And that's the energy, especially when I read for people in LA. It's so hard because, I don't watch too much of other stuff, and I feel very happy when I'm just on my road, not watching everything, because I don't know. We're way off on a topic now, but
yeah. Well, no, it's fine. But the point I was making earlier, I guess it is that the money does getting like success and have your dreams come true, and then getting money. It provided some comfort, but then kind of made my creativity go stagnant. I had to search for other tension, and money does a lot of money because it creates other problems, but. Sometimes you can deal with those problems. It's great. You have like a seemingly more complex reality, I guess. But, anyways, I guess where this was all coming back to is in this pursuit of this dream falling apart, not falling apart, succeeding, but then like being really confused why I'm not internally happy, fulfilled. And I'm not even knowing really why I'm not fulfilled. Like, what is the thing I'm bothered with? I have a successful career. I have money. I have a girlfriend. I have like everything's perfect, but why the contrast internally? So that tension of staying in the band, even though I didn't want to, because I couldn't make the decision, created an environment where I would go on tour and just isolate by myself constantly. I would be in the hotel room as long as I could up till sound check, go do the sound check, come back to the hotel room until 10 minutes before the show, then go to the show, after come back. And I was just reading books and listening to lectures. At that point, just following my curious instinct on where to look for what my questions were, like I grew up Christian, but it wasn't my family. I kind of chose it in middle school because it was a fun thing to go do, and it was a social community. The religious aspect of it was something that was like always secondary, and I faked a lot through, because I had a lot of weird questions, but I didn't care to rub against it until I started to become a man and like live on my own. And then I was like, I just dropped a lot of that shit. But I just didn't have even the concept of like enlightenment or awakening. I had heard the terms, but it was never a thing that I like had considered was a phenomena that had happened or was a pursuit or any of this shit. It was not on my mind. Like spirituality was kind of out the door for me around 19 or 20 years old. Pretty much considered myself atheist until this like pursuit started happening. And I had, later in the story, I had experiences that were like mystical, supernatural experiences that made me finally go, oh, okay, I deny my Christian Jesus kind of thing. That whole story, I did like, don't really align with that. And this other thing though, there's some other phenomena here that's magical, whether we're calling it God or whatever, it's something else. And there was enough confirmation there that I then like doubled down on the pursuit of more knowledge through books and people that had other experiences. But like I never had a guru or anything that I was like truly going after. I started to just use my internal instinct and mostly the curious, playful part that was just trying to figure something out, and trying not to be as not biased as possible. Like I know there was a lot of parts of me that was wanting certain things to be real, but I was just trying to do my best to be objective with it. And so this long story, that was, that all happened between like 2018 to 2020 was this two year like fire, curiosity and kind of this like expansion of what I understood myself to be and like the reality we're living in. And I went as like up and down of things of contradicting and denying, all of those things. But, so yeah, it was like around then that it really kicked off. But I think I definitely feel when I look back, it's hard for me to remember, but around the 2012 12 phenomena of thinking the world was going to end. I do, like, if I look back, I remember like a lot of stuff in my life shifted around there, and there was a change in perception, I think, of me starting to become a little more like anarchist in the way reality was being given to us,
Yeah. That, first of all, it really is an interesting, because I'd imagine some people in that industry would think they were born to deserve it. Like they deserved it. And you know what I mean? Like, which is a different, I don't know, I'm trying, like sometimes you meet famous people that just, they thought they deserved it. They're better. That was just a weird, but to do it and be grateful and know what it is really interesting. I would never exchange the travels that I took around the world for anything. When you realize how big the world is and how little you are and how much there is, that's an education you can't give. I was just listening to Carolyn Miss, and she was saying how when you first unplug from the tribal belief, you have to move away. You have to move away. And people, like where I'm living now, people do not leave Utica, New York. Utica, New York is the city. Not New York City, Utica, New York. And it's like, you guys got to get out. But that's a really incredibly brave thing to leave that. That had to be really hard.
Yeah, it was really hard.
Even if you knew it was right, that is, like I was just talking to your friend, and she was saying she had someone in her family was a doctor that left the medical field because of pharmaceuticals. And I was like, that's 8 years of school. He did the whole thing.
Yeah,
that's really
a lot.
Brave. That kind of change is so brave.
Yeah, I think there's a part of me though that, like, through experience in my life, and also just understanding, like, learning more and more about being alive and reality and change and nature and stuff, that a lot of those times where we think we're so attached to one way of reality and we kind of want it to be that way and we stick to it, that's a place for a lot of things to go wrong, because there's not much in reality that does that stays stagnant. In fact, there's not really anything. But that being, moving slower or staying stagnant is not good for growth. And so you have to be able to, I think I learned somewhere that they're like, if something's not working, I'm not going to like try to force a dream onto something that's not really fundamentally working, because it's gonna fail along the way. And so
that's old soul stuff, because I'm always like, I can make it work.
Yeah.
I can force it.
Yeah, well, there's a part of me that likes that too, because I enjoy finding the best way to something, and but I don't know, it's
that for me is the one part where I don't think I can ever give up comedy, is that it's a puzzle. Every joke is a puzzle. Every, how you write it, how you deliver it, all that stuff. I sit with my two friends, and one of them has like 3 Emmys, and the other one wrote for the Academy Awards, and every day we text 3 jokes to each other, and I'm always like, what's today's puzzle? And that, to me, I think we'll be doing it into old age homes.
I think that's having the playful look on reality is like definitely a helpful, it's kind of what I think is a big, like, fundamental core part of this universe is playful and curious in nature.
Yes.
Because that's the one place where, like, change happens naturally and it's kind of sought. But it's like, because there's like a state of boredom. If you get bored, it's the opposite side of creativity. So it's like being playful and curious births creativity right there. So that, and it constantly is generating new ideas. It's like the edge of infinity. It's like what reality is.
Which brings up another topic before we even get to the topic that I wanted to talk to you about. So we're going to take a break and be right back.
Many people are unaware just how much hypnotherapy can help them, or think it's only to help lose weight or quit smoking. But there is so much more hypnotherapy can do. It can help with stress, anxiety, insomnia, phobias, performance enhancement, connecting with your spirit guides and higher self. You can even discover past lives and your life between lives. Heal traumas, break habits, find your deepest truth, or just have fun discovering who you really are, all from the comfort of your home. I'm Monique Pliakis. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I want to help you. Schedule a free consult by going to www.innerstandingshypnosis.com. That's INNERSTANDINGS hypnosis.com. Understanding's Hypnosis. Find your power and ignite your inner light.
So I am always trying to learn to draw and do that kind of art. I'm a pretty creative person. I have, obviously comedy is creative, and also, so I have had, so I do morning pages, automatic writing. That's like my thing.
Oh, Artist Way.
And lately, I've woken up and I feel like, I don't know if it's my angels or my guides or whatever, they have been giving me pictures and they've told me to just draw pictures. Just draw this, draw this, draw this. And it's very simple, but it seems to do something. And then I had a friend that said, art opens portals. And on one of my predictions show, I think everybody was saying art is going to become very important. And for years I have said artists are going to be the new 3D printers of society. I think doing something creative is mandatory. I think if people are not doing something creative, and I don't care if they're setting up a smiley face with the peas on their plate at night, I think it's going to kill people. Isn't that weird? I know that sounds very dramatic, but you know what I mean? Like they may be dying inside if they don't start doing something.
If they don't start creating.
Something, yes. Something. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be an art project, and it can be a story they tell in their head, or it could be, a way they play with kids, but I feel like it's mandatory now. It's not.
Yeah, in many ways, I feel like I look at, if you follow that line where we're saying like very well could be what you call the source or God. Like it's a big part of its essence is a playful curiosity endlessly, like childlike, even more so than what we say is a childlike curiosity. This is like beyond that. And that is the space of like expression too, and true uniqueness, because that curiosity leads to something that like hasn't been seen before. Like when I make music, all I want to hear is something that I haven't heard before. And when you're doing that, you're pursuing like right on the fringe of, for now, what is in the material world or what's here. And so you're like kind of pulling from this infinite and imaginal space. I think as artists, that's where like it's channeling in a way. Mm-hmm. And artists, if you're able to pull concepts down, whether that's a painting or a joke or a song or a whole movie script, any kind of little expression, if you think of it in some way, it's like it's our duty. And it's like kind of the gift of being a creator being. A creator is like, if we are from this God, like it makes in our likeness, we have the ability to do that. And it is called art. We call it art, but it's like pulling these ideas from the ether or through consciousness or whatever by being endlessly curious about whatever you're curious about and trying to pull out ideas that are not like here yet. And so I think that's like, when you actually do that, we're pulling the ideas from the etheric world. Yeah. In a place that they don't exist, but they exist. They're just not a material form. And you organize them down into a material form and you put something here that wasn't here before. Uh-huh. That's the ultimate goal. Is like a lot of artists, I think we're all guilty for it, is that we are kind of mimicking other artists before us or people that we're inspired by, and then we make our own version of it, and that's unique in itself. But to truly do something that's unique and never been in this material world right now is really hard to do, because I think you have to be you have to be tuned internally and know where your ego is and where your desire is for what you're doing and why you're doing this, and knowing how to discern what's your true instinct and your true expression, or what's being filtered through others that you've learned about or that you're inspired by. It's such a nuanced thing, creativity, like really truly tapping into that. But I do think it's like, not as like a burden, but it is a duty or a kind of like a right that's given to. It's a health benefit. Like you have a duty, like you have to eat to keep. I think so. I think it's getting that way. I think we're not. And I also think it's far more nuanced that like to be like you don't have to be an artist to do this. It's like creating something could be as small as like an experience, but it could be an experience. Like I could go to my friend and create a certain environment through a conversation and a certain thing that happens, and like you were creating that. don't think we do anything. Like, we're moving through the world and like destructing and creating at the same time, always.
Yeah.
And I think if we like start to learn that, like, a lot of people say they aren't creative and they don't have the ability to.
I hate when people say that.
Yeah, because it's like, I think we're just not looking at it. It's a perspective shift. Because like from certain perspectives, I get that. The feeling of not being a creative person, not being able to tap into what you see other people doing creatively.
It's also one of those perfectionist. I'm not, like I even said, I'm not really good. I don't draw well or whatever. That's a perception that if I'm not creative, that means that can take you into perfectionism. I'm not creating because it's not perfect, which stops so many people. I'll never forget one of the first things I drew when I was when I got Procreate and I got my Apple Pencil and I just posted it. And it was very simple. And I was like, I'm learning to draw. And first thing someone wrote was, don't quit your day job. And I was like, wow, that's so, like, I think they thought they were being funny, but I was like, just kill it right there. That's where we all kind of stop.
Well, the interesting thing, just a quick note on that too, I think this is Terrence McKenna said this, I'm saying it a different way, but it's the artist's job is to create something. Try to create something unique, like we've been talking about, like On the Fringe, something that's truly an expression of you, not you regurgitating something else. Truly unique expression of you, and put it out into the world because it wasn't there before and it needs to be here now. And then go back to the drawing board and do your art again. Do another one. Don't worry about who likes that or who doesn't like it, because truly, in this way we're talking about what the art is, it's objective. It's not, it's not meant to be like one way or the other. It's not meant to be boxed up. True art is supposed to be all of the things you want it to be. The observer or the person who's taking it in, the criticizer, they can do all of those things. The art is supposed to make it's supposed to stir it up. I think when art is like given and it's understood right away and it's like dead, like real art is like complex and it doesn't actually need a lot of time into it. Some really beautiful expression art can happen in the instant, and a splatter of something, if someone knows how to connect and see that as something beautiful. But if you're trying to box it in and say that's not very good art compared to the Rembrandt over there, that's
right,
like really,
then you're gonna lose.
Yeah, and art isn't like that. It's fucking subjective.
You just really inspired me because there's a Faye story that I wanted to turn into a half-hour special, and I got my friend Tommy. He's going to shoot it. We got all the plans and everything, and then life kind of got in the way. We just couldn't get this time or the money or whatever. And I literally when I got to Utica, it kind of got shut down in my mind. And I never had these thoughts before. And I never have this thought about my podcast. Or I say it jokingly, which was it went to, all of a sudden I heard just all these other people saying, she doesn't believe that nutty story she told. Or she doesn't, instead of my whole attitude towards it was like, wow, nobody has a story like this. This is going to be fun. I'm going to work it. And all of a sudden, when I moved out, everything just stopped. And this week, I just picked it up again. And Tommy and I started talking about it again. And I thought, what put the fear in there? What was the drip of fear that came in that told you not to do this or to do something else? So I feel like right now you're kind of inspiring me to just do it and let everybody call you crazy. And I know, like, this is a weird side note, but I know I didn't watch it. I watched like the first couple of minutes of Ricky Gervais, who my sister loves, but he's just like, there are no ghost photos and these people are stupid. And I don't usually have any of that tuned in. And people were like, did you hear? And I don't want it because what you're saying. I want to do what I do, put it out, and then what's next?
Yeah, you truly got to be thick-skinned, I think, to be any kind of artist and not be swayed by people's critical opinions. And it is there's a place in the world for like the art of criticizing or like I get it. It's not like it's an art, but from the Terrence McKenna quote, I think the real refined thing is it's not the artist's job to be the critic.
It's just to do it, then
it's to do it and move on.
Love
and that when we attach to it the idea of what it is going to be, the outcome and everything, it's just all dead end trails of you're either going to end up doing the art to try to get that experience again. So you're going to try to recreate art like that, which isn't the idea. You want to create something unique and different every time. And that's, so you're going to kind of get stagnant, or you're going to be hurt by somebody not liking it. And then you're never going to pursue what you just were pursuing, which you may have started to pursue something that was actually going to uniquely be you. This is the other thing. I think true art that's like really great isn't quite understood right away.
That
like,
could be it, because it
has to sit and grow.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know. It just feels really good to get that out and say, start it again, go again, like you were going at it. Just keep going at it and do it and throw it out there, because it does. Totally. Once you get into the talk of money or this or that, then it goes away. Then the magic goes away, and it is just my one magical experience, and that's what I'm going to do. But usually, because I felt like I came into this world needing no convincing that magic this was all real. Like, I'm still shocked. So when somebody like Ricky Gervais says there's no ghost photos, I'm like, how?
Like, well, that's
and
weird.
Yet I don't want to get in the argument with him either, because he's deadly. But there's a part of my brain that's like, how can you say, have you seen all the photos? You know what I mean? I almost always feel like I have a friend that does not believe in psychic stuff at all, gets readings from me all the time, married a reader, still will insist, but will call me every day. What you said happened, but he still insists he doesn't believe. And I think he is super psychic and doesn't want to face it. So I think actually all the stuff that Ricky Gervais writes, he's probably more psychic and in tune than all of us, but he can't let down that wall that says it's not real.
Well, yeah, and then there's the phenomena of like where it starts to get really hard to talk about, but the thing that the reality is kind of driven by our mind first, like what it wants to believe. And that's like a deep, deep subconscious thing that's hard to discern when it's even doing its thing. But deep down, like if his reality is, there's something in the reality that for somebody that is so high strung on it not being real, that there's some little pin in that reality that it could be, if the paranormal thing's real and that pin gets pulled, it's going to lead to a cacophony of his reality falling apart and a lot of it being denied. Potentially his income, potentially his family, potentially any massive part of his reality that like the ego is going to do everything it can to go, that's not real. And then it also, I believe it's this deep that subconsciously it's going to put you in a perspective of reality and in a certain part of reality that doesn't happen a lot, which is going to double down on your convincing that this shit ain't real, because it's never happened to me. It's never, because if you don't believe that it's actually possible, you're probably not going to have it happen to you, because those things are connected. If you believe it's actually possible and you start to resonate with that, like sooner or later, that's going to occur, because you're pulling that thing in. I think that consciousness is tied in so many different ways. So I get it. It's like somebody's so fringing on that, but like it does mean, I think it's like the part of me that when I was like awakening and stuff, there is that side of you that once it kind of all happens and the bliss wears off, you want to go back to the like naive and not knowing, because there's like the ego part of you felt like it ran the show and it was like safe that way. It's like, now I don't have this other shit I got to learn, and the universe isn't at all what I thought. And like, oh my God, there's beings higher above me and below her. And like, I'm in the throes of, it's too much. So it's like
too big. Yeah.
I think some people's like, the subconscious can know that like, wait a second, if you don't pull the ghost thing on us, because if you do that, like everything's falling.
I feel like, and this is where I hope to be, this is maybe what I don't know if I want to say a more open-minded person or a more, the person that I want to be, is because you do pull in what's around you. So another lady had said to me, why is it only the people that have these near-death experiences already were religious people beforehand? And I was like, that's not half. That's not even
true,
half.
yeah.
And I was like, but she was so sure, and that was her reality she pulled in. And I just want to be the person that can go, oh, that I was wrong. There is that and that and that. You know what I mean? But that actually draws us to this is a perfect segue for where I think we were going to go. Maybe this isn't the perfect starting point, but I'm going to give it a shot. So, As for systems falling apart, when I used to listen to Art Bell, he had on this woman and she was very entertaining. I couldn't go along with everything because she was way too systematic is the word I want to use, but she was maybe too Catholic. She was like by the book, and she was very entertaining talking about demonic forces and stuff, which I know we all think differently on, but that's like one of my interesting topics. But she said to Art Bell, she said, if I saw a UFO, everything I believe would be gone. That I wouldn't believe in God. I wouldn't believe in anything. It would like, seeing a UFO, not like it would fit in or integrate, or maybe there's those and God. It was like, she was like, I think I'd kill myself because it didn't fit into her system, which is kind of like, that's so drastic.
Yeah, that's a huge, what's interesting, it's like, I don't know, I don't resonate with that at all. It's just like,
right? That's
people,
like,
certain people,
that's so close-minded and so like, I know everything.
Yeah, and so it's like the only thing I can think is like there are the way people experience the way like the entire of humanity right now is all dealing with different levels of trauma that I think are like waves of the past or happening now. Even there's like a lot of dark shit we're all experiencing, and I think the trauma does do something to that ego part of our consciousness where it like doubles down the walls and everything because it's trying to protect itself. I think we're experiencing trauma and not knowing where the trauma is coming from causes anxiety and all kinds of things, because it is like fight or flight 100% of the time because you don't know where to look for where it's coming, you know? And I think that's a big part of what we're all experiencing is trauma that we don't know where the point is coming from, and therefore we can't understand it and find meaning and like get rid of, reconcile the trauma, transmute it. So there's a certain people I think are very, very rigid in their ways of thinking because it's a subconscious mechanism that's trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, it has to be A, B, and C. I hate to put any hierarchy. It feels like a younger soul. Maybe it's an older soul that had too much trauma. But I just thought, I even try... Like sometimes there was a Christian demonologist that came on TikTok who would probably disagree with a lot of my life. And so I listened to him, and there's always a moment I go, well, what if he's right? And just because I can take that in, and then I go, no, I don't think I would feel this way about my life if it was wrong. Do you know what I mean? But I'm open to go, okay, what's your argument? Maybe I will die and be like, whoops. Sorry, I thought I was doing the right thing. But right now, I just don't want to just cancel. It's very interesting. All right, let's take a break and then see if we can fit in even what we were going to start talking about. It's not going to happen in 20 minutes. All right.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and Prithvika is my collection of consciously created crystal and nature forged jewelry. Prithvika translates to of the earth in Hindi, which represents the natural earth-made materials I'm working with, along with my personal ancestry and grounded energy. Each piece is created through ceremony and science and completed with being Reiki charged. I'm currently featuring copper mirror necklaces, which can be used for protection and mirror magic. My intention is for your new piece of jewelry to feel like an extension of self, to help bring your desires to fruition and to amplify the magic within you. My Instagram is @Prithvika, and my website is prithvika.com. That's PRTHVEEKA.com.
So you listen to a ton of podcasts, and we got to do a conversation about plasma.
All right. Yeah, plasma. So we were talking about that this morning, and she was like, or yesterday morning, was that? And said you want to do a podcast about this. So I had actually been listening in the last couple of days, synchronistically, a couple podcasts that were both talking about. Well, there were a couple talking about plasma, the plasma phenomena, self-organizing plasma, and then trickster energy. And so I was pursuing both of these kind of rabbit holes simultaneously. And
And I'm just going to interrupt. Self-organizing plasma. Can you just expand on that for 1 second?
Well, yeah. So that's what this whole thing is probably going to try to be about.
Then go ahead.
But it's this is something that like I just got to sit front. I'm just embarking on, and my curious mind has like already is like jumping to some maybe like some preconceived like, oh, okay, that's what this means then, and I'm running down the trail. As a precursor to like the way I love searching for knowledge, and I do still read a lot of books and listen to podcasts, but I also am like aware that there's like the way to get knowledge is internally and through your intuition or through channeling, whatever way. The way I've worked out right now for me is like I scan a lot of knowledge, and that's kind of an intuitive basis thing too. Like this podcast here, I have like 7 podcasts I probably follow weekly. And then I'm always open to like other things I'm hearing, books, whatever. And then certain things will sit in my brain for about a week, and then I'll like mull it over a little bit and filter through things. And then a lot of it will like drift away as not true. And there's like little core things that stay true, even if it's like I'm listening to some Dumbo that like I don't agree with their perspective at all. Sorry, I don't mean to say Dumbo, but
that's okay.
Even if I don't agree, like there's certain truths that I'm going to pick up, and so I'm very objective. I just listen like with an open filter,
even if the truth is the opposite of what they're saying.
Totally,
it sparked a thought. Oh, it's not, yeah.
Because what I've realized in my own pursuit is like this shit's fractal. Like information's fractal, reality's fractal, and so I kind of throw my net out through just curiosity of listening to podcasts and reading books. And what I'm realizing is over the years, I'm doing that all the time and reading contradictory books, both sides of things and stuff. But then there's this sediment that's coming from the net that are truths that are staying with me, that when I often get in deep conversations with people, they come out and they're like, oh, these are and then the dots connect, and then there's new information from the web of truths that are now lining up to me. And that like is creating this kind of web of internal like knowledge, or of some kind of like remembering, like putting the dots together, and it's all starting to now be sometimes just internal instinct. If I have a curious question in my mind, I can kind of figure it out.
Yes, because I actually think what you're talking about also sort of starts to tap into Akashic records and other things. Like
and there's many different names on it, and that's what like for me. And that's what I've realized, the Akashic Records, I've tried to study that phenomenon with Edgar Cayce and all kinds of, and I feel like that's all true, but there is this like, we kind of all have to spiritually figure it out ourselves, and those are blueprints, but we all have our distortions of language and distortions of, the other thing that's really interesting to me about through the trickster vein is like a personal myth that we are kind of playing out. Like we resonate on a lot of the same things, but you grew up in a whole different place of the world with a whole different upbringing that I'll never truly understand. You can tell me all the stories and stuff, but I'll never have your unique perspective. And mine's very different as well. Where did my mind just go?
I do this all the time.
Yeah, because this is kind of a rabbit trail that we don't need to go down. But what did I just... and so you would live your life up until this point with different attributes, different mechanisms that you use to understand your reality. And that's your personal myth. You have your heroes that are your people in your life. You are a role in your life, whether you consider yourself the hero or you're the villain.
Archetypes, yeah.
Yeah, it's all archetypes. So this is all that layout. And I think that we're kind of meant to figure out, like, learn through other people's experience, whether philosophers or gurus or mystics, that they're trying to communicate a universal blueprint. And like through a lot of religions and stories, there's all similar, same myths, different characters, same. So that there's a unique thing that's like a blueprint that anybody can kind of latch on to. And there's a harmonization to that kind of like works in universal law. And there's a good and bad side to it, and there's tension, polarities that I think are all about balance. That's the tarot card.
That's the major arcana, the story of the major arcana. It's the story of movies. It's the
and
story
so as we talk about these things, this is what's amazing is like when you start searching through this spiritual knowledge, it's all connected. All different different words and stuff, different trails that go down, and worth going down because they all have different little bits of information that all sync up in this beautiful way. So all of that being said, I'm in the middle process right now of just understanding a lot of this like plasma type technology, and then understanding more about the trickster energy. I really have loved that kind of phenomena, so I am always looking into that. But I started looking into it. I unpacked a different element and got deeper on it. And I saw that line crossing with this plasma thing. And so I then was like, whoa, I started coming up with my own concepts. And I'm in the middle of that. And so oftentimes in a week, I'm going to drop all of this, and there will only be a couple truths left.
And we're going to pick up at plasma, but I wanted to ask you, when you say trickster energy, do you mean, like, in paranormal, to me, trickster is a spirit that comes in and just kind of messes up the house, not for any reason other than to be a problem? Do you mean like energy that is tricking or misleading us purposely or not purposely?
So I mean all of those things, and this is like, we should have a whole nother podcast episode on this, because it's really interesting. I think it's like, when I say trickster energy, I actually, from my perspective right now, I should actually say trickster function or trickster phenomena. It can be expressed in many different ways, but what unpacked a deeper, like, I've, studied the surface level of the ancient stuff of it. So like the trickster deities like Loki and Hermes and Mercury, Thoth, all of that, and the myths that they're telling, and the trickster element of creation. There's a lot of different, like, more spiritual elements to it. And then there is the paranormal phenomena. And that's always all interested me. And I've gone down all those rabbit trails. And now what's like uncovered more to it is that a trickster function of the psyche. And there's a psychologist named Stephen Richards, I think is his name, on this channel called Young to Live By, who's another younger guy that's like a psychologist as well. And he's teamed up with this guy, Stephen Richards, who he has been studying Carl Jung and was a big advocate of him. But he also was really wanting to close the gap of where Carl Jung left off and to where we are now. There has been nobody that like really understood Carl Jung and then closed that gap. He seems to understand it in a real way that, like, I haven't seen the more Jungian type of community really bring Carl Jung to the forefront in modern times. Some of them seem to all be kind of, there's a lot of really great theories still there, but they're like kind of dead in the water, and there's still a lot of like arguments back and forth about what he was saying. So
and I bet a lot of people are afraid to be that original person that goes a little off the beaten path and say, I think he was saying this.
Yeah, and which Carl Jung himself was doing that. He was going against the grain at his time, studying schizophrenia. It was very edgy. So this guy closed the gap, is what it seems like, and there's a part of their...
Those aren't EVPs, folks. That's a Pappy story.
Yeah, that's Pappy.
The happiest pit bull in the world.
So he basically, the short end of that, like, if we want to do another one, we can expand on this, but it's that there's a function to the psyche that creates this trickster phenomena that it in itself is trying to balance and create homeostasis in your consciousness. And like, when things happen, like consciousness goes out of balance, i.e. you awaken, or you have a psychedelic trip, or just a change in consciousness, breathing, anything, an OBE, some kind of altered thing, there is this trickster element that comes into the psyche, and it's basically going to the ego. It's not your like spiritual soul self. It's coming in to try to balance the ego. And what eventually it'll do, if it's not, it'll try to get a message across to the consciousness, to the self and the ego, to get some kind of meaning and something to be understood, so it goes back to homeostasis. If that doesn't happen, it turns into this trickster function, which again is trying to create balance through a different mechanism now.
So is it might be trying to deny or say you didn't really see that,
or say you are Jesus and you have awoken, you're here to save everyone. To lead you on a path to the failure to that, to get that shadow off of you, to then create homeostasis in a long run way. The interesting thing is, you think about homeostasis on a biological level, it's very quick. Homeostasis on a psychological level is something that would have to take a lot of time, because it has to take into account your personal myth, a million different aspects, and it's about long growth of soul. So it could take one lesson over many different souls, and a trickster function could be leading that. But it's all about homeostasis. And so what's interesting is the quick version is it starts to, an imbalance happens, the trickster function comes up as a psychopomp, which is something that is more of a guide. It would be like you communicating with your higher self and trying to get that balance. But oftentimes your higher self is like using universal law. It's not going to overstep. So if the message isn't received through that vessel, and it could be your higher self or even a guru or a friend trying to like balance what's going on, if that doesn't happen, it becomes a trickster element, which then is a bloated guru, so it's the bloated opposite. So that's when you would think you're Jesus and you would think you know everything. You would think that you have this shit under control. You are awakening or whatever is happening. You understand it all. And that's when a lot of like weird things can happen to, again, push you over the edge to try to come back to a balance. If it doesn't the message doesn't get across then, and there's still no homeostasis, it goes into starting to express itself as a precursor to paranormal events. There's high amounts of synchronicities. And this is just to backstep for a second, this is just one aspect of the trickster thing. So there's the trickster energy and the trickster archetype, which is a whole other conversation. This is just one aspect potentially of the psychic element of consciousness.
And I'm going to recap this really quick and then keep going. And then this is really interesting because, a poltergeist is not an outside spirit. It's coming off of the person.
So that's what we're talking about. This is mostly a poltergeist effect.
So your psyche goes off balance. It can't quite get back on balance. So the trickster energy comes in and goes, we're going to fool you back into where you should be.
And then this synchronicity thing starts to ramp up. To again, trying to create like some kind of off balance to get a message or a meaning across, which is mostly just a precursor to this poltergeist event. I should say poltergeist, not paranormal, to try to make a little distinctions here. But then the poltergeist phenomenon will happen, and that's the like almost like the material aspect of the trickster, like making itself known, and it's the most extreme to, again, try to get this message across, which does, and still most people do. If there's like that poltergeist event, it creates fear. It creates a lot of stir up.
Adrenaline. That
will potentially, if dealt with correctly, can bring you back to a real great homeostasis. And so the other element, that's another rabbit hole to go down, is that it's to be understood as a helpful tool. It can be one of the most helpful psychic functions that can propel you through expansion, but it also can be like a extreme bitch because it can trick you, and it's within your subconscious ego interplay. So having deep discernment and deep spiritual connection is like one of the best protectors of that, because you can discern whether you are in yourself right now in the trickster function. Even talking about it is a weird thing because in your psyche, it starts to bring up who's talking right now.
Right.
And that's why, like, sometimes talking about it in these deep ways for the psychological level evokes it a little bit.
That's very interesting. Like
on this thing, and it hasn't happened to me, but I definitely have had like many experiences with the trickster thing. But on this Young to Live By channel, they're talking about it deeply, and this thing starts to show itself. There's like poltergeist phenomenon during their podcast. It's on video.
Wow.
And it's undeniable. You're like, oh my God. But the guy's talking about it as it's happening. And so he starts kind of communicating with it. It's like, it's really, really, really interesting.
Well, that is, and this is what I do think is happening to mankind. And this is why manifestation is happening so fast, or time is happening so fast. All these things is, I think there are certain things that used to take weeks or days to manifest that are immediate. So if he's talking about it and it's happening, I 100% believe that.
Well, and the other interesting aspect of it, so the thing is, it happens, psychological on a personal level, but then there's social, I don't know the term, but it's like a social psychological level. It's like the collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Everybody gets
there's a trickster function to that as its own entity, that if you look at it, the opposite side of what the trickster energy is, which is a playful thing. It's like playful curiosity. You can't box it in. It's shape shifting. It's that nature. It's like always questioning and stuff. The opposite of that is something that is rigid and saying it's one way, not the other. It goes in a system. It goes in a system. It's a dictator type thing, and a dictatorial type of way of being is the opposite of the trickster thing, and that's an imbalance. And so the trickster element, like if we look at our society now, it's just pretty easy. Like the dictator side of our culture right now, if you look at it with a certain clarity, a certain perspective, there is a trickster phenomena that has captured all of it and is playing it out as far as it can to try to get the balance of the culture.
So it's almost like you're saying, like politicians are caricatures now.
If you look at them, it's like clown show.
Yeah.
From a certain perspective, you're like, they're all lying, and there's this other thing going on, but then you can also be aware that there's a certain amount of people that are looking from the perspective that's all true.
Right.
And that's where the trickster thing is. So certain people who are, spiritually inept enough to see it, it just comes across as like ridiculous. But when you see how deeply in control those people are and what they're doing just as clowns like that, that's the trickster thing. And it's knowledge to be seen to go, oh, this is a trickster. That's why everything's chaotic and nuts, because it has to all kind of fall in this whole trickster long scope thing that's trying to balance and get some kind of utopia to a huge group of people. This tribalistic thing that we've been trying to do, forcing it, telling it's this way, it's not, it's this religion, it's not, is in itself the opposite of growth. It's the opposite of the creative function of reality, where it's like playful curiosity and always growing, always keeping an open mind.
It's such this is a little bit of a side note, but it's weird how when you were talking about things intersecting, because this is almost intersecting exactly with, and if you are on my Patreon, I think this podcast is coming up as for when this comes out, or I think maybe it came out, but there's a book that I'm doing that, was recommended to me. There's two guys, this is from the 15th century, that were channeling angels, and they're getting how you do this type of magic. And it's really fascinating. And it's, as much as I can say this, however, it's kind of been the book through time about how you make these specific symbols and how you do these things. And there's a place in it. These guys are really doing this magic. It's really happening. It's all, there. And then it takes a turn. And they have quotes, and this is where I get confused, because I think respect throws me off, because I do think I'm communicating with perhaps Archangel Michael or this and that. It's not, nobody's coming to my room. Nobody's, I'm not a crazy person that says the ceiling opens. But when I write, I get certain things, and then they will say, yes, this is me. And it's not, no one's telling me brilliant things. They're just telling me like what's wrong with my psyche, or how I can be magic, or how I should create. And there's the part of me that is always like, do I, as this little being, really get to talk to you? And the answer is always yes. But they're really doing it. And then in a way in this book, it takes a turn where they are told to wife swap. And this is a conversation I have a very long time with Tommy about it. And we can't figure out if they stopped listening to their gut and a malevolent spirit came in instead of them sticking to the rules of, make sure you're listening. Or the other thing was, I always have this question, because the one time I had my friend Diet on, and she channeled a real demonic spirit. And my last question was, do you guys have a sense of humor? And he said, we do, but you wouldn't get it. And then I wonder too with the angels, because we always have this impression that the angels are here to watch over us and tell us, and blah, blah, blah. I think they have their own agenda. And then I was wondering, was that funny to them? Was that actually their sense of humor? Or now you've added a third theory, which is maybe this became so enormous to these two guys that the trickster kind of psyche came in and tuned to balance it. And this also happened to Thomas Aquinas and to Edgar Cayce.
So this is like so many thoughts. I think that there's on this theory of, and I haven't talked about this really with anybody, and maybe this is common, but like I truly think whatever we call God, this like one spirit or whatever, it in itself is a trickster thing, because if you look at like I think one of the biggest lessons the trickster phenomena or energy is trying to convey is like the trickiness of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that can never be mastered. It's not, because you think of it in its nature, it cannot be boxed in. So when you think you know the trickster energy, you don't. Everything I'm talking about right now is like something
right.
we're trying to convey an image of like what it potentially is. But it is something that I look at as almost like a governor of imbalance, whether that's too much good, because all love and light sucks. It's like it's not, you got to have balance. There's tension. So there's polarity always. This trickster element might be the ultimate governor of all expansion and consciousness at all levels. And what it is like, if for that phenomena of somebody like channeling something great and then all of a sudden it turns sour, some subconscious thing was in balance and it wanted to get all this information for its own good, maybe, or maybe it's
you're not supposed to know.
You're not supposed to know, and you're at a point where it's like, or maybe it's playing a trick and going, how good are you right now? It's like an initiation. This is my other theory too, is like when we awaken and you like, there's this whole theory of initiation rites through secret societies, and then you can kind of look at the entire thing of, if you can expand your consciousness and you like get to these other levels, there is an initiation, you could call it, that you have to go through to be able to like live in that higher realm, to like hold that space, because you can't come in there with negative stuff because it doesn't work in that energy. So there is something that is like an initiation ritual, which are like just little tests along the way. And I would say it's like an extreme in our like awakening, because we're coming from such a dense place and we're trying to expand. So it's like a baby waking up. So there's a lot of them right away. And we're constantly tricking ourselves. Oh, I made it. I get everything now. And then you keep doing it. But my theory is now is that the true like understanding of what we would call like magic now, spiritual magic, and all of this like manifesting and stuff is working with that trickster energy, knowing how to work with it, never identifying with it, and you know that you never understand it. You can have little rituals and stuff that you do to invoke it and get it in the room, but you kind of never know really like what could happen. You do everything that you can by understanding universal law and alchemy and all these other things that get you to be able to like harness other energies and working. I think that's all kind of working with this trickster element throughout it constantly. Like even though you expanding and there are these higher beings, St. Augustine and all these other people that were like alchemists and doing high magic, and maybe their spirits are still here, they're doing that. They're all dealing with trickster energy at a higher level. It's far more complex than we can even conceive right now. But I think at every level this thing's there, because it is a governor that keeps the low, like destructive energies from going to the high and actually destroying the entire joint, you know?
And it probably is the biggest issue of faith.
What do you mean?
That everything happens for a reason. Even though you don't have to know the reason.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that there's...
like trusting that you're still safe, even though there's a trickster energy overseeing, but still going, okay, we're going to be okay though.
We're saying, yeah, because it's also, I mean, it's tied in everything we're saying, because there's always a contradicting nature to everything. But like this has been my struggle, is actually, if you do like really embrace this trickster thing where it's the core of everything, it is hard to get motherly like security from that and find a safe place in your reality where you can really ground, because you're like, this thing's like a trickster, but how do I trust it? But that's because I think we're like looking outside of ourselves for something still.
Right.
It's to know that like the trickster thing, you can't be it. There is not it. It's not a thing. It's a function. It's like
a reaction.
It's a reaction. And I do think this is where eventually I want to stream off into plasmas, because I think it can evoke itself into like other beings and other forms, whether it's like an egregore or what we would call like a cryptid, which is just a collection of I don't know, it's a million different things, but plasma and consciousness and all those things.
This is perfect. And I'll put this right here for folks. I think folks know because they listen to my podcast, but like sometimes we call it a thought form or egregor or a, what's the other word we use? You're creating where my best example is the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is some weird crypto creature that came from a wild story that makes no sense. A woman had 12 kids, said if she had another, she would have the devil. She has the kid, it runs off. Now we're in 2022 and people are seeing it. It's because people think about it, put so much energy into it, it becomes a thing. So go ahead.
Yeah, and that's like that's behind all of that is to like really know the truth of that, is understanding how consciousness is this like thing that is connected. It's not, I mean, I don't think we understand scientifically what consciousness is, but.
And it's that it's more powerful than we're thinking.
Yeah, and that it potentially has it can be in other things that we thought didn't have consciousness, and that it is this like interconnected network that things, a lot of information can be traveling through. But that also that this world we're in, the ether and everything, we don't understand that culturally yet, and that phenomena is something that potentially beings, whether it's consciousness attention towards something that creates it or other beings and energy, it uses this like ether element as it comes through that essentially, and that's this other plasma rabbit hole that I went down. Is there like a limit on time, or can we
can do?
Okay.
We'll go. And especially this plasma thing, because it's this is pretty fascinating, and it's one of those things that you told me, and then it keeps connecting here.
And that's what the more I look at it, it's like connecting more, and I hesitate to talk about it too deeply because it is.
Give us a
lot of math stuff that I don't really understand yet.
We'll get you back on the podcast with a heavier version of it.
So. The essential idea is like that I've learned deeply what like they say, not deeply, but the self-organizing plasma. There's also this thing called EVOs, they're calling it, which is electronic vacuum objects, which comes from an Italian thing. It's like an interesting, I think it's actually called strong electron in Italian, and EV was something else in Italian, but now it's EVOs, electronic vacuum objects, which is the scientific like dorky part of this is it's electrons and ions combining together to create a like vortex, like which is a geometric shape that is in balance, and it creates, so there's like negative charge, I think it's negative or positive, ions in the middle surrounded by electrons that are the opposite. So there's polarity there, and it creates a torus. So it's like a harmonized, for people that aren't into like the math and stuff, I've like done a lot of like rabbit holes, digs of that stuff where there's, sacred geometry and specific math equations and stuff. There's a lot of that shows you the fractal nature of reality and the harmonization of everything. And so when you have certain, like, basically this is a phenomena that these electrons and ions come together and it creates what I understand to be, it's like the perfect shape. It's a donut, a torus, which is what our body energy field is made of, the Earth's energy field is made of, the universe's energy field is made of. And that is it can interact with the ether, which is something that is still kind of confused in the mainstream. But what I understand is the in-between kind of everything. It's the space of everything, and that's electric. And when this thing is created, it is something that interacts with that in like a multitude of different ways that we're trying to figure out how that works, what it is, and all of the above. And so it's obviously something that's like not being allowed to be studied in some ways. So there's been private people that have been trying to study it and they had a lot of success. But then there's obviously people in our past like Tesla and people that were getting into the free energy of the earth. This is basically what they were playing with. And so this is like now more modern science. The people that I've been listening to that understand this have like, again, brought that information a little bit more modern and expanded on it. But what it creates is that essentially this plasma thing is a technology, but it's also like, it's a essentially a being, because it's a harmonized beginning of life. Again, it's not, or it doesn't, what we would say is organic, like from the earth, like we as humans kind of come from the earth is a theory, like that it's, but this is so a being can be in it, and essentially like it can harmonize and create growth very quickly, so it can become structures. And this is where consciousness gets into it. What I think is consciousness is tied to this. This is a harmonized, like, open vessel. And if you understood higher knowledge, you could project your consciousness into this and create whatever you wanted.
Ah, that makes...
So within this thing is also like free energy and like anti-gravity, what we would say is time travel, but it's more like time warping. And this is then also where the UFO technology would come into play that the government potentially would have, is to be able to create UFO, like get hold of this technology, create a vessel and travel around in space, but then also, potentially create some mind control events that would happen that we would assume is magic and assume as aliens, when it's really them trying to control something.
There's this is reminding me of a movie, and I can't tell which movie, and if anyone listening knows, put it in the show notes. But it's almost a sci-fi movie, and I don't know if it's one that takes place underwater or in the space, but where they are talking to a plasma. You know how they always say the movies come out like 10... Yeah, I can't remember, but it's all making sense like I'm seeing it like I saw it in a movie.
Yeah. Well, and so the side of it, this is just all like new information, which is the more mechanical side. I like understanding some of these spiritual elements when it does connect with like real science, not the scientism stuff. There's a deep understanding. I like understanding the mechanics of a spiritual phenomena or spiritual things. Because I do believe there is a like divine connection. It's all fractal. So the science is helpful to a certain extent, and then it needs to connect with the spiritual element. So there's certain times,
and metaphysics need to...
Yeah, and there's certain times where I like understanding that. It's harder to like really create a imaginal story to get deeper on this stuff through that avenue. So to switch it up, before I got into this deeper mechanics, the other thing I was connecting with the trickster stuff and more this like cryptids and paranormal events is that this plasma technology in that world, when I was looking into it, when people are talking about plasma, it seemed to be something that it is this tech, but it can basically, whoever the observer is, it kind of plugs into their consciousness. And so this plasma thing seems to be like, it is a higher tech that at some point your consciousness can like either project onto it and like make it something, or project into it and control it, or all of the above. I'm not really sure, but they seem to definitely be connected to the point where when someone's experiencing a cryptid event or a paranormal event, it's going to show itself via what the consciousness... Pappy, he's dreaming.
He's dreaming.
It's going to show itself via what the observer's consciousness most aligns with for it to understand meaning and what's going on.
That is, first of all, my theory about two things. The first one is black-eyed children. There was the person that made up the graphic novel about black-eyed children is a real person, and then it somehow snuck into the paranormal world, and now people see black-eyed children, like they became. And the same thing, that's what I think Slender Man was. Or it's either that, or, and this could be sort of the same thing in a different way, like Slender Man was just a shadow person, and then someone created the story of Slender Man, and then people were focused on it, and either it's the plasma, or sometimes I think a malevolent spirit went, you want Slender Man? I'll give you Slender Man.
Well, so the other rabbit hole of this is that the phenomena, apparently what an EVO is, like, it is just... So they actually happen all over there's a natural phenomena that it occurs too. When there's a spark, that there's an EVO really quickly. He's like, this guy that I was learning it from, I think his name Kosh. It's like his secret name. But he's like, a spark happened. There's a momentary EVO, even just for a blip of a second, and then it's gone. But so
not
essentially,
enough energy to
for something to happen, I guess if you knew what you were doing, you probably
you know how much you had to focus on.
Yeah, I think it's consciousness. It's tied in, but this guy expands upon that, like, so they're in everyday things, even static, like natural static with socks on the floor. There's like, if there's ever a little spark from that, that's EVOs come from that. The Brown's gas machine that we have, the hydrogen machine, that's based off of EVOs, like the chemical reactions happening in there, creates them. And so he expands that into, there are places on the earth where, if, again, this ether is electrified in a sense, and then there are certain combinations of, I don't know whether it's certain molecules in the air, or ions, electrons, that coalesce together to create this stuff. Like ball lightning is another natural phenomenon that's full of EVOs. And that could happen at certain places. And there is a place of conceiving this where these EVOs can have, that maybe it is a being of its own and can be become a being. It definitely, this guy says it can evolve quickly, way more quickly than like how we evolve as beings in a molecular form. On a molecular form, it is very quick. And so it's as if it's like combining all of these things, the paranormal, like the egregore consciousness thing, everybody focusing on one thing, and potentially this plasma phenomena being a natural phenomena that's occurring in certain places that everybody focuses on, or ley lines that do have a certain amount of energy, and it's kind of has its own kind of consciousness evolution, but also whatever people are projecting onto it because it's conscious. I mean, because it's connected. So it's like the plasma thing seems to be, whether we can say that like there are people that have control over that and they're using it nefariously, or that it's just a fundamental aspect of this higher like knowledge of this earth we're on, that there's this electrical phenomena that can be understood and harnessed. And
that might be where manifestations are coming from.
It's where it could be like the spiritual things connected to it as well, you know, and which again is why you have this initiation to get this higher utopia that we're imagining, or at a higher consciousness, is a pretty like radical thing when you really think about what it could entail. Is that it is fractal in nature, but that means a lot of what we're doing right now has to go because it doesn't harmonize fractally up, and that you have to like, so all of these things, it really could be like free energy is here, all these things are possible, we just have to deprogram what we know about everything to understand this new thing. And so these they really could be all connected, and
I'm sorry. And then a weird way to wrap this in a weird bow. I was supposed to do stand up in Israel before the whatever happened, pandemic, whatever that was. In Israel, they have a real problem with people that suddenly snap into, they think they're Jesus. Like a lot of people, and they have to get them out of there because they stay there and they're acting like Jesus, and they start quoting scripture and stuff like that, all right around Israel.
Right around Israel.
And, where is it? Where everybody's fighting? Bethlehem. No, where Jesus was born. Where they right on, what am I thinking? How did I lose that thought?
I forget the city you're talking about.
Exactly, where they cross over, where the Israelis are never getting along with the Palestinians. Yeah. That place of land.
The Holy Land.
The Holy Land.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, like no reason at all. Just all of a sudden they're Jesus, and they can't get them out of that.
Huh.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, I wonder what that is. I don't know. It's really interesting to see how a lot of these things connect. And sometimes it does make me a little bit like, for instance, this rabbit trail, it's like, okay, there's plasma, there's galactic beings, you know, like beings that are of this universe that we just can't conceive of, the other planets that like, I'm sure are here to interact, whether that's these light orbs or not. Who knows? Then there's ancient like mysteries here, and there's like earthly beings, there's giants, there's like inner world stuff. There's all these theories, but there's some way they all connect. It just at times I get like, if there's plasma and there's trickster energy, and there are other divine beings that are trying to get messages, and there are other higher beings that are bad that are trying to deceive, like who the fuck knows where to look for real truth, right? And that's what I was like from the beginning is like, oh, I'm the only one that knows the truth for me. Like, that's the only discernment. And it's kind of the importance on doing shadow work, doing actual spiritual work and not just searching for knowledge. Because at some point it does become like, well, damn, there's too much knowledge and I almost know too much now, because how do I really trust if that's a plasma or is that a poltergeist because of my psyche? I'm losing it right now. Is it a trickster? Is it a divine being? Is this a real message? And I just can't even conceive what they're saying. It sounds bad, but maybe on a higher level it's good. You go crazy. It's like, it sounds like schizophrenia. So it's like that, all it does is lead you back to your inner
what
knowing.
Does your gut say?
And you have to figure out like where your ego is, where your inner guide is, who the fuck's running your show, because that's your only like safety. What I feel like is coming. It's like there's too much information and not enough grounding into what is really true. And I do think that there's too many, it's all half truths, because everybody's got their own distorted like myth that they're playing out naturally. It's no one's fault, and they're all good and bad and whatever, but you can't really trust anything else except your own intuition and instincts. And you have to do everything. Like I constantly am working on trying to discern really what is my desire, who is running my show, like every day. If I'm really addicted in the moment, like why am I doing that? Get to the bottom of it, so it's not in my way in case I do come across some plasma being. I hope that I can be balanced enough where I can discern that intuitively, like that feels bad to me, or that intuitively this feels like this is really good. This is a loving energy. And that's like on an energetic, deep level, that information can be given or seen. It's not going to be communicated verbally and all those things. There's too much potential for deception in that, whether it's somebody else's own deception that they're blind to, or whether they are actually trying to deceive and they have a bad motive. It's like that, all that stuff, it just gets too stressful to try to like figure it all out, And that's what, just to tie it up, it comes back. That's, if we want to put it another way, that's like a feminine, masculine energy thing. When I find myself searching for knowledge, there's a masculine part of me that wants to know the science, know the mechanics, know where it all came from, and file it all in my mind. And so I can recall it whenever I need. And then the other part of us is like this feminine side that's intuitive and kind of deep thinking. It's like, it's based differently. And that's that thing that I was saying earlier, is like, over my long game of giving information, there's that side that is like retaining the real truths without me knowing it. And I think that that's the side too, that is the access inward to like this feminine side that knows what's right, knows what's real, and where it needs to go. But most of our culture is driven right now by this more masculine thing of get that truth, trust the science.
Ghosts are not real. There's no picture of ghosts.
Go to the science, and that'll tell you the truth, which is it's outside yourself. It's not the true freedom. So I often find myself nihilistic sometimes when I'm getting too much information, and that's when it is like, okay, I need to go back and balance inside where my internal device is and get grounded there. I've searched too much. Now I have way too much information where I don't know where ground is, And
also, and this is I just don't know. It's like, it's like there's that spot in our brain when people have a near-death experience that it's actually an activated spot in the brain. And I feel like, do we actually have the brain power to conceive, to understand this? Like, we may just... Like, I'm fully acceptable that I may not have the brain power to ever truly understand an angel, but it doesn't mean it's not there and I can't.
Yeah, I think maybe I agree. There's like, I don't think the universe is meant to be understood. It's meant to be played with.
Yes.
And like lived through. But there's something to like seeking the understanding through a different mechanism that isn't like through your eyes, ears, and like the knowledge and the words. It's seeking it elsewhere, and it's like deeper truth. That's like for each person to discern where that is, I guess.
Well, that was amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. We could go on many rabbit trails.
Well, next time, let's do that again.
Yeah.
Come on again when you're ready for the next plasma hole, especially.
Yeah.
How about it, Pappy? Was that good?
And he's sleeping half the time.
Oh, he's such a good dog. He moves so quick.
He gets
he's
worried that we're looking for ticks on him. He hates
I'm
ticks
sorry.
pulled
I
off.
know, and I'm part of the tick because I was very nervous last time. Where can people hear more of you talking?
Well, I don't talk much right now. I had a podcast for a while. It's like, God, it's been 2 years now since I did. I did 2 episodes and stopped. I decided in the pandemic that I was going to join everybody else and be like, yeah, I'm going to do a podcast. And then the only reason I stopped was I just got too into life. I was just doing stuff and too busy with life. I had a lot of things changing and things, and I had a lot of things I want to talk about, but not in a space to talk. So I do want to get it going again. It's called Sudden Movements. It's on like all the podcast things.
Come back on when you're ready to start again, or we'll listen to the old ones or whatever. It was just a fascinating conversation. It was just great.
Yeah, and I mean, I have an Instagram. I don't talk on there a lot. It's Suitnop. My last name backwards, but instead of an S, it's a 5, so it's 5 UITNOP.
5 I'm glad you said that. There's so many. I had to mark my thing private because people kept replicating it.
Oh yeah.
So I try to when I almost let everybody in, but I have to look and I try and guess who is fake and who is real. And if I saw that, I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. I don't think I'm gonna let that person in. So I'm glad I have to rethink it.
I'm like, I'm not very active on there right now, but I eventually want to put music up there and stuff. And
yes, then everybody
podcast.
go, because your new album is great. Where can they get your new album?
Oh, it's on Spotify. It's not it's like I guess it is an album. It's all the music I do for Jessa's podcast, Jessa Green's podcast, for AOD. And so a lot of the people that listen to that have been wanting it somewhere. And I was being snooty and not wanting to put it on Spotify because I just wanted to go against the man model, the main man model. But eventually I finally just did that. So it's on Spotify as Suitnop.
Suitnop. There. All right. Thanks so much, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. This is awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. We'll see you next week. Join my podcast or my Patreon, where you can either learn tarot and psychic stuff, or you can just get extra episodes of this podcast and what's going on in Utica. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Paranormal Karen, she's a spooky kind of queen. Paranormal Karen, she's an angel without wings. Comedian, ghost hunter, conscious exploring. She's a funny gal and a real woo pal. She's Paranormal Karen.